Jones's finger was inches from her face when the music died and the room went silent. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just said, "You don't know what you're doing," and that's when a voice behind him replied, calm and lethal, "He really doesn't." By the time Jones turned around and heard the name Giacomo Guerra, it was already too late. If this story pulled you in, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss what's ahead. I've got another unforgettable story coming tomorrow. And while you're here, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing people tuned in from all over the world. Okay, let's get back into it. The Velvet Room, downtown, one of 15 exclusive establishments in the district. The kind of bar where conversations happened in low voices, where deals were made over expensive scotch, and where the real owner's name was never on any official paperwork. Becky Hall had walked in 30 minutes earlier, her arm linked with Giacomo Guerra's. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Friday night. Early spring in the city, still cool enough for leather jackets, warm enough that the bar's doors stayed propped open to let the night air drift through. She'd been sipping a gin and tonic, waiting at the bar, when Giacomo stepped outside to handle a phone call. Business. Always business. She'd been alone for maybe 4 minutes when the two men approached. Jones came first. Late 20s, leather jacket zipped halfway, the kind of swagger that came from never being told no. Cocky grin, tattoos creeping up his neck, built like someone who solved problems with his fists. Scott followed half a step behind, taller, quieter, but with the same aggressive energy. Flannel jacket over a dark shirt, the muscle to Jones's mouth. They'd been watching her from across the room. Becky had noticed them 10 minutes ago. Noticed the way Jones nudged Scott, the way they assessed her like prey. She didn't react, didn't leave, didn't even glance their direction. That, apparently, had been the problem. Jones slid onto the bar stool next to her without asking. His shoulder brushed hers deliberately. "Hey!" Becky didn't turn her head. Just kept her eyes on the glass in front of her, condensation sliding down the side. "I said hey." Jones's voice sharpened. She took a slow sip of her drink. Scott moved closer on her other side, hemming her in. "My friend's talking to you." The bartender, Miguel, a middle-aged man who'd worked here for 6 years, glanced over, then quickly looked away. He knew better than to get involved. He'd seen situations like this before. Becky set her glass down carefully, turned her head just enough to meet Jones's eyes. "I heard you." Jones grinned. "Then why you acting like you don't?" "Because I'm waiting for someone." "Don't see anyone." Jones leaned in, invading her space. His cologne was too strong, trying too hard. "Looks like you're all alone to me." Becky's expression didn't change. "You should walk away." Scott laughed. Actually laughed. "You telling us what to do?" Around them, the bar's atmosphere had shifted. Conversations had lowered. People were watching now, pretending not to. Some held their phones casually, cameras pointed in their direction. This was entertainment, drama, something to talk about later. Nobody intervened. Jones reached out, fingers brushing the gold hoop earring dangling from Becky's ear. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't be sitting alone in a place like this. Dangerous." Becky's jaw tightened. "I'm not alone." "Yeah?" Jones looked around theatrically. "Where's this mystery man?" He stepped out. "Convenient." Jones's finger moved from her earring to point directly at her face, inches away. The universal gesture of disrespect. "Here's what I think. I think you're lying. I think you walked in here trying to look important, trying to act like you belong, and now you're realizing you made a mistake." Scott moved even closer, completely blocking her path to the exit now. "You don't refuse us." Becky's voice remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. "You don't know what you're doing." Jones smirked. "That a threat? A warning. We own this block, sweetheart." Jones's finger stayed up, aggressive, territorial. "You're in our territory." The music seemed to lower. Or maybe it was just that every other sound in the bar had faded. Miguel, the bartender, froze mid-pour, eyes fixed on something behind Jones and Scott. Several of the regulars, the ones who actually knew what this bar was, who it really belonged to, shifted in their seats. Their expressions changed, phones lowered, because someone had just walked in. The front door had opened so quietly most people missed it. But the air in the room changed. Becky saw it happen in real time. The subtle wave of awareness that rolled through the crowd, the way spines straightened, the way conversations died mid-sentence. Jones was still talking, oblivious. "So here's how this works. You apologize for the disrespect, You buy us a drink, and maybe, let her go." The voice came from directly behind Jones. Low, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout to command attention. Jones paused, turned his head slightly, irritation crossing his face. Then he saw who was standing there. The man wore a perfectly tailored black suit, no tie, the top button of his dark shirt undone. Tattoos were visible along his neck, intricate patterns that disappeared beneath his collar. His hair was dark, styled back, mid-30s, handsome in a dangerous way. But it wasn't his appearance that made Jones hesitate. It was his eyes. Cold, calculating, completely unreadable. And behind him, 2 other men in dark clothing had risen from a corner table. They didn't move forward. Didn't need to. Their presence alone shifted the dynamic. Scott recognized the danger first. His face went pale. He took a small step back. Jones, slower to catch on, tried to recover his bravado. "This is a private conversation." The man in the black suit didn't blink. His gaze moved from Jones to where Jones's hand hovered near Becky's wrist. "What are you doing?" he said quietly. "To my fiancé." The word hung in the air. Fiancé. The room went completely silent. Giacomo Guerra had built his reputation on 3 principles: speak softly, move strategically, and never waste violence. The 3rd rule was the hardest to follow, especially when he'd just watched 2 men corner the woman he loved. He'd seen it all through the front window, the way Jones invaded her space, the pointing finger, Scott blocking her exit, the crowd doing nothing. His jaw had tightened, his fist had clenched at his side, but he hadn't run, hadn't burst through the door shouting. Because men who ruled through chaos eventually drowned in it. Giacomo had learned that lesson young, watching his mentor's empire collapse in a storm of bullets and retaliation. No, real power was controlled, surgical, inevitable. So he'd walked in slowly, calmly, let the door close behind him with barely a sound, and watched Jones's face drain of color at the single word, fiancé. Giacomo didn't move closer, didn't need to. He simply stood there, 3 feet behind Jones, and let the silence do the work. Jones's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You're... what?" "You heard me." Giacomo's voice remained even, conversational almost, but there was steel underneath. "Step away from her." Scott had already moved back 2 full steps, hands rising slightly in a gesture of surrender. He knew. Maybe he'd heard the stories. Maybe he recognized the tattoos, the ones that marked Giacomo as someone who'd earned his place through blood and strategy, not just talk. Jones tried to laugh. It came out strangled. "Look, man, this is just a misunderstanding." "Is it?" Giacomo's eyes flicked to where Jones's finger had been pointing at Becky's face moments ago. "Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were threatening her. We didn't know she was with anyone. She told you she was." The statement landed like a slap, because it was true. Becky had warned them, had given them an out. They'd ignored it. Giacomo took 1 step forward. Just 1. The movement was precise, controlled, like a chess piece advancing on a board. Jones stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. "And now," Giacomo continued, his tone still conversational, "you're going to tell me who you are." "Nobody," Scott blurted out. "We're nobody. We were just leaving." But Giacomo's attention was on Jones. "Your name." "Jones." "My name's Jones." "Jones." Giacomo repeated it slowly, as if tasting it. "And you thought it was acceptable to put your hands near my fiancé's face?" "I didn't touch her." "You were close enough." The distinction mattered. In Giacomo's world, intent was as dangerous as action. Miguel, the bartender, had backed up against the liquor shelves, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Mr. Guerra, I tried to..." Giacomo held up 1 hand, not aggressive, just a simple gesture. Miguel went silent immediately. That was power, not shouted commands, not threats, just a raised hand, and a man twice his age stopped mid-sentence. Becky hadn't moved from her seat at the bar. She sat perfectly still, her gin and tonic sweating onto the mahogany, her expression calm. But Giacomo could see the slight tension in her shoulders. The way her breathing had deepened just a fraction. She'd been afraid. Not of Jones and Scott. Becky didn't scare easily, but of what might happen. Of the situation escalating. Of someone getting hurt because 2 idiots didn't know when to back down. Giacomo's chest tightened. He'd left her alone for 4 minutes. 4 minutes to take a phone call about a shipment delay, a minor logistical issue that could have waited. And in those 4 minutes, she'd been cornered. His fault. His responsibility. Do you know who I am? Giacomo asked Jones quietly. Jones swallowed hard. I've heard stories. Then you know I don't make threats. I don't waste time with warnings. Giacomo's eyes were dark, unreadable. When I have a problem, I solve it. Permanently. Scott looked like he might cry. Please, we didn't mean any disrespect. But you did disrespect her. Giacomo cut him off. You saw a woman sitting alone and assumed she was vulnerable. Assumed you could intimidate her. Assumed there would be no consequences. He let the words sink in. Around them, the bar remained frozen. Phones had been lowered. The regulars, the ones who knew what this place really was, watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. This was a lesson. A public one. What's your name? Giacomo asked Scott. Scott. Giacomo nodded slowly. Jones and Scott. I'm going to remember those names. The threat was implicit. In this city, being remembered by Giacomo Guerra was not a good thing. Jones finally found his voice, desperation creeping in. Look, we'll apologize. We'll leave. We'll never come back. You're right about one thing. Giacomo's expression didn't change. You will never come back. Behind him, the two men who'd been sitting at the corner table stood up fully now. They didn't approach, didn't speak, just stood, hands clasped in front of them, silent and menacing. These were Giacomo's men. Not bodyguards, he didn't need protection, but enforcers, witnesses, the physical manifestation of his authority. The manager of the bar, a thin man named Peterson who'd been hiding near the kitchen entrance, finally rushed forward. Mr. Guerra, I am so sorry. They're not regulars here. I didn't know they would. Peterson. Giacomo's voice remained calm. Are you running my establishment, or is it running you? Peterson went white. Sir, because it seems like anyone can walk in here and harass my guests. Giacomo finally looked away from Jones, his gaze settling on Peterson. That's a problem. It won't happen again. No, Giacomo agreed. It won't. He turned back to Jones and Scott. You have two choices. You can leave this district tonight and never return. Never set foot in any establishment I own. Never speak my name. Never mention this incident. Jones nodded frantically. Yes, we'll. Or, Giacomo continued, his voice dropping even lower, you can refuse, and we'll have a very different conversation. In private. The unspoken threat was clear. Scott grabbed Jones's arm. Let's go. Now. But Giacomo held up his hand again. One more thing. They froze. Giacomo stepped to the side, gesturing toward Becky, who still sat calmly at the bar, watching the entire scene with those intelligent, calculating eyes. Apologized to her. Jones's mouth worked soundlessly for 3 full seconds. An apology should have been easy. 2 words. I'm sorry. But his pride wrestled with his survival instinct, and for a dangerous moment, Giacomo wondered which would win. Scott figured it out first. He turned toward Becky, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. We're sorry. We were out of line. It won't happen again. His voice shook. Genuine fear. Jones, however, still hesitated. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists at his sides. Giacomo watched him carefully, recognized the look. He'd seen it 100 times before men who couldn't reconcile being dominated. Men who would rather escalate than submit. These were the dangerous ones. Not because they were strong, but because they were stupid. Jones. Giacomo's voice carried a warning. I'm waiting. The entire bar held its breath. Finally, Jones turned toward Becky. But his eyes didn't meet hers. Instead, they fixed somewhere over her shoulder, on the bottles lining the back bar. Sorry, he muttered. It wasn't sincere. It was barely audible, but it was enough. For now. Good, Giacomo said quietly. Now leave. Scott practically ran for the door. Jones followed, but slower, his shoulders tight with humiliation. As they passed through the entrance, Jones glanced back once. The look in his eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was resentment. Giacomo noted it, filed it away. Men like Jones didn't forget being embarrassed. They nursed grudges, let them fester, but that was a problem for later. The door swung closed behind them, and the bar exhaled collectively. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Phones were pocketed. Miguel immediately started pouring drinks with shaking hands, trying to restore normalcy. Giacomo turned to Becky. She was already looking at him, one eyebrow slightly raised. Dramatic entrance, she said. Despite everything, Giacomo felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. You're welcome. I didn't say thank you. You were thinking it. Becky took a sip of her drink, which had gone warm during the confrontation. She made a face and pushed the glass away. I had it handled. I know you did. And he meant it. Becky was smart, capable, stronger than most men he knew. But you shouldn't have to. She stood up from the bar stool, smoothing down her burgundy top. They were harmless, just drunk idiots with inflated egos. They put their hands on you. Near me, Becky corrected. Not on me. There's a difference. But Giacomo had seen the tension in her shoulders, had seen the way her fingers gripped her glass just a little too tightly. She could project calm, but he'd learned to read the subtle signs. She'd been uncomfortable. Maybe not afraid, but aware of the danger, and that was enough. Come here, he said quietly. Becky moved into his space without hesitation. His hand found the small of her back, exactly where it had been earlier in the evening, before the phone call had pulled him away. I shouldn't have left you alone, he murmured. Giacomo. She looked up at him, her curly hair catching the amber light. I'm not made of glass. 2 drunk idiots hitting on me isn't worth this much concern. They weren't hitting on you. They were intimidating you. Same thing, different packaging. But her hand rested on his chest, over his heart. I knew you'd come back, in time to see that asshole's finger in your face, but not touching. She emphasized the word deliberately. Giacomo took a breath, forcing himself to let go of the anger that still simmered beneath his calm exterior. Becky was right technically. They hadn't crossed certain lines, hadn't actually put hands on her. But intent mattered, and Jones had intended to dominate, to humiliate, to make her feel small. That was unforgivable. Peterson approached cautiously, wringing his hands. Mr. Guerra, again, I apologize profusely. I should have intervened sooner. You should have intervened immediately. Giacomo's voice was even, but the criticism landed hard. The moment they approached her, not when it escalated. You're right, absolutely right. This is supposed to be a safe establishment, Peterson. People come here because they know the rules. They know respect is required. Giacomo's eyes were cold. What happened tonight suggests those rules aren't being enforced. Peterson's face went red. I'll do better, I promise. You will. Because if this happens again to anyone, you won't be managing this bar anymore. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact. Peterson nodded quickly and retreated back toward the bar, immediately barking orders at Miguel and the other staff. Giacomo's 2 men had returned to their corner table, resuming their positions as if nothing had happened. But their eyes stayed alert, scanning the room. Becky watched them, then looked back at Giacomo. Do they follow you everywhere? Not everywhere, just most places. Most places where there might be trouble. So, everywhere. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Giacomo studied her face. What's wrong? Nothing. Becky, she sighed. I just wonder sometimes what it's like. To go to a bar and have it just be a bar. Not a chessboard, not a power display. Just drinks and music and normal conversation. It was a fair point, one that stabbed at something Giacomo rarely let himself feel. Guilt. He'd brought her into this world, this life where every interaction was weighted with history and hierarchy, where a simple night out could turn into a public demonstration of authority. I can't give you normal, he said quietly. I know. Becky's hand moved from his chest to his jaw, her thumb brushing along his cheekbone. I'm not asking for normal. I chose you, Giacomo. All of you. This life. This world. This version of safety that comes with armed guards and territorial displays. But sometimes I wish those idiots knew what they were playing with before they started playing. They know now. Do they? Becky's eyes searched his, because Jones looked angry when he left. Not scared. Angry. She'd seen it too. Giacomo's jaw tightened. He'll cool down. Realize how close he came to real consequences. In a few days, he'll be thanking whatever God he believes in that I showed mercy. And if he doesn't, then he'll learn a harder lesson. Becky was quiet for a moment, then she leaned up and kissed him softly. Just promise me it won't escalate. They're not worth it. Giacomo returned the kiss, his hand cradling the back of her head. I promise. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Men like Jones didn't let humiliation go. They retaliated. The story of Giacomo Guerra didn't begin with power. It began with survival. 20 years ago, he'd been a teenager with no family, no prospects, and no future beyond the street corners where boys like him sold whatever they could to eat. The city had been different than wilder, more chaotic, controlled by men who ruled through terror instead of strategy. He'd watched that world burn itself down. Had watched his mentor, a man named Rodrigo, build an empire on fear and violence only to die in a hail of bullets outside a restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon. 17 bullets. Giacomo had counted them later, looking at the police photos in a newspaper someone had left on a bus seat. The lesson had been clear. Loud power attracted loud enemies. So when Giacomo began building his own influence, he'd done it differently, quietly. He'd started with one bar, then two, then a restaurant. Then a shipping business that moved legitimate goods through legitimate channels, and occasionally, things that were less legitimate but far more profitable. He'd learned to speak in measured tones, to smile when appropriate, to wear expensive suits and attend city council meetings and donate to charitable causes. He'd learned that fear was more effective when it was whispered than when it was shouted. And over 15 years, he'd built something Rodrigo never had: stability. The district knew his name, but they didn't spray paint it on walls or shout it in the streets. They murmured it in back rooms and private conversations. They understood what it meant when someone said, "That belongs to Guerra." It meant untouchable. Now, standing in the velvet room with Becky's hand in his, Giacomo felt the weight of that reputation settling around him like a cloak. Everyone in the bar was watching. Not obviously, they'd all returned to their drinks, their conversations, their phones, but he could feel their awareness, the subtle glances, the way they angled their bodies to keep him in their peripheral vision. They were waiting to see what he'd do next. Because what happened here tonight would be a story. Stories spread. And in his world, stories were currency. "Let's go," Becky said softly, tugging his hand. "Not yet, Giacomo. 5 minutes." He squeezed her hand gently. "I need to make something clear." He understood what she wanted to leave, to put this behind them, to not turn this incident into theater. But that wasn't how this worked. If he left now, immediately after Jones and Scott fled, the story would be incomplete. People would fill in the gaps themselves. Some would say he'd overreacted. Others would say he'd been too lenient. No, he needed to control the narrative. Giacomo released Becky's hand and turned toward the center of the bar. He didn't raise his voice, didn't call for attention. He simply stood there, and one by one, conversations died. "Some of you know me," Giacomo began, his voice carrying effortlessly in the silence. "Some of you don't. For those who don't, my name is Giacomo Guerra. I own this establishment. I own 14 others like it in this district." He paused, letting that sink in. "I don't come here often. I prefer to let my managers handle daily operations. I trust them to maintain certain standards." His eyes found Peterson, who stood frozen behind the bar. Standards of safety, of respect, of atmosphere. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Tonight, those standards failed. Giacomo's tone remained conversational, almost casual. "2 men walked into my establishment and harassed my fiancée. They cornered her, threatened her, created a hostile environment." He gestured toward the corner where it had happened, though Becky had since moved to stand near the wall, arms crossed, watching him with an unreadable expression. "And what did the rest of you do?" Silence. "You watched. Some of you recorded it on your phones, thinking you'd captured some entertaining drama to share with friends later." Giacomo's eyes scanned the crowd. "But you didn't intervene, didn't tell the staff, didn't do anything except spectate." The discomfort in the room intensified. "I'm not angry," Giacomo continued, and it was true. He wasn't. He was disappointed, but not surprised. "I understand the instinct. Don't get involved. Don't make it your problem. Safer that way." He took a few steps toward the center of the room. "But here's what I need you to understand. This bar, and every establishment I own, operates under a very simple principle. You respect each other. You respect the staff, and you respect the rules." His voice hardened just slightly. "The men who were here tonight broke those rules. They're gone now. They won't be coming back. Not to this bar. Not to any bar, restaurant, or business I control in this district." Giacomo let that settle for a moment. "But I'm also making a new rule, effective immediately. If you see someone being harassed, anyone, not just someone connected to me, you have 2 options. You can intervene safely, or you can tell the staff immediately. What you cannot do is film it and watch like it's entertainment." He pulled out his phone, held it up. The next person I catch recording someone else's distress instead of helping will be asked to leave, permanently. A few people had the decency to look ashamed. This district has a reputation, Giacomo continued. A reputation for being safe, professional, discreet. That reputation is valuable. It's why businesses thrive here. Why people choose to come here instead of other neighborhoods. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. That reputation is built on mutual respect, and I will protect it. The message was clear. The rules applied to everyone, even paying customers, especially paying customers. Now, Giacomo's voice softened slightly. Enjoy your evening. First round is on the house. The tension broke like a snapped wire. People exhaled. Conversations resumed, though more quietly than before. Miguel and the other bartenders immediately began pouring drinks, grateful for something to do with their hands. Giacomo returned to Becky, who was watching him with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. You just couldn't help yourself, she said. I needed to address it. You gave a speech. I made a statement. You sound like a politician. Politicians wish they had my approval ratings. He offered his arm. Now can we leave? Becky took his arm, shaking her head. You're impossible. You love me anyway, unfortunately. But she was smiling. As they walked toward the exit, the crowd parted naturally, creating a clear path. People nodded respectfully. No one approached. No one asked for photos or autographs or conversations. They simply acknowledged him and let him pass. That was power. Not demanded, not forced, simply understood. Outside, the spring air was cool against his skin. The street was quieter here, away from the main thoroughfare. Streetlights cast pools of amber light across the sidewalk. Giacomo's car was parked at the curb, a black Mercedes, understated but expensive. One of his men, the one who'd been sitting at the corner table, materialized from the shadows near the entrance. Sir, we'll follow at a distance. Giacomo nodded, appreciated. The man melted back into the darkness. Becky waited until they were in the car, doors closed, before she spoke. Do you think Jones will try something? Giacomo started the engine. Honestly? Yes. Becky's apartment was in the east tower of the Meridian complex, 23rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. She'd lived there for 2 years, long before she'd met Giacomo, and she'd refused to move even after their engagement. I need something that's mine, she'd told him. Not ours, not yours, mine. He'd understood. Respected it, even. Now, standing in her living room at nearly midnight, Giacomo watched her kick off her heels and pour 2 glasses of wine, with the practiced ease of someone trying to process the evening. You really think he'll retaliate? She asked, handing him a glass. Giacomo accepted it, but didn't drink. Men like Jones, they operate on ego. And tonight, his ego took a beating in front of a room full of witnesses. So what does that mean? It means he'll do something stupid. Giacomo moved to the window, looking out at the glittering skyline. Not immediately. He'll need a few days to convince himself he's brave, to find allies or alcohol or both. Becky settled onto the couch, curling her legs beneath her. And when he does? We'll handle it. We. She repeated the word with emphasis. I notice you said we, not I. Giacomo turned from the window. You're part of this now. I was always part of this. The moment I said yes to you, I became part of your world. Becky's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. What I'm asking is, what does handling it look like? It was a fair question, one that deserved an honest answer. Giacomo sat down beside her, close enough that their knees touched. It depends on what he does. If he just runs his mouth, spreads rumors, talks big in bars where I don't have influence, I let it go. Words don't hurt me. And if he does more than talk, then I respond proportionally. Proportionally. Becky set her wineglass down. Giacomo, I need you to be specific, because proportionally in your world might mean something very different than in mine. He'd known this conversation was coming. Had been avoiding it since the moment they'd gotten serious, since he'd proposed 6 months ago in this very apartment. Becky knew what he was new about the businesses, the influence, the gray areas where legal and illegal blurred, but knowing abstractly was different from seeing it up close. Tonight had been up close. If Jones vandalizes one of my properties, I make sure he can't do it again, Giacomo said carefully. If he threatens you or anyone else I'm responsible for, I remove him from the equation. Remove him from the equation. Becky's eyes searched his face. That's deliberately vague, because the specifics depend on the situation. Have you ever killed anyone? The question landed like a stone in still water. Giacomo held her gaze. Yes. He'd promised himself he'd never lie to her. Not about the small things, and especially not about the big ones. Becky absorbed this. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just processed it. In self-defense? She asked quietly. Sometimes. And other times? Other times because it was necessary to protect something bigger than myself. Like what? Like the stability of this district. Like the people who depend on my businesses for their livelihoods. Like the order that keeps random violence from spilling into the streets. Giacomo's voice was measured. You've seen what happens in neighborhoods without structure, Becky. Where gangs fight openly. Where children can't walk to school safely. Where businesses close because they can't afford the protection money. So you're the hero? There was no sarcasm in her tone, just genuine curiosity. No. I'm just the devil they know. He reached for her hand. I don't pretend to be noble. I'm not some vigilante cleaning up the streets. I'm a criminal, Becky. But I'm a criminal who maintains order, who keeps worse things from happening. She let him take her hand but didn't squeeze back. And Jones? If he comes after you, or me, or your businesses, what happens to him? That depends on what he does. Worst case scenario. Giacomo considered his words carefully. Worst case scenario? He disappears. Not violently. No body, no crime scene, no investigation. Just gone. He gets on a bus to another city with enough cash to start over, and a very clear understanding that he can never come back. And if he refuses to get on the bus? He won't. But if he does? Giacomo's jaw tightened. Then he stops being my problem and starts being the police's problem. I'm not a monster, Becky. I don't hurt people for sport, but I will protect what's mine, including me, especially you. Becky was quiet for a long moment. Her hand finally tightened around his, just slightly. I'm not afraid of you, she said. I want you to know that. I've never been afraid of you. I know. But I am afraid of losing myself in your world. Of becoming someone who justifies violence because it's proportional or necessary. She looked at him directly. I fell in love with you because underneath all the power and control, I saw someone who actually cared, who built instead of destroyed, who chose strategy over chaos. I'm still that person. I know. And that's why I'm asking you, begging you, don't let Jones turn into something bigger than he is. Don't let two drunk idiots in a bar become an excuse for escalation. Giacomo understood what she was really asking. Don't let your ego make this worse. I won't, he promised. Tonight I showed restraint. I could have had them beaten in the alley behind the bar, could have broken bones, sent messages, made examples, but you didn't. Because that's not who I am anymore. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. I learned a long time ago that the loudest power is the weakest power. Real authority doesn't need to shout. Becky leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. I just want 1 year where nobody points fingers in my face at bars. Despite everything, Giacomo smiled. That's a very reasonable request. Good. Let's make it happen. They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the silence, the city lights painting patterns across the hardwood floor. Giacomo's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. You should check that, Becky murmured. He pulled it out reluctantly. 2 texts from Raphael, one of his most trusted men. Jones and Scott spotted at Murphy's bar on 5th. Drinking heavy, talking loud. Second message. They're talking about you. And her. Thought you should know. Giacomo read the messages twice, then deleted them. What is it? Becky asked, lifting her head. Nothing that can't wait until morning. But he was lying, and from the way Becky looked at him, she knew it. By morning, the entire district knew what had happened at the Velvet Room. Giacomo had learned long ago that information traveled faster than light in his world. A confrontation in a crowded bar, a public humiliation, a display of authority, these things became currency. People traded stories like stocks, each retelling, adding embellishments, shifting details, amplifying drama. By the time he arrived at his office at 9 a.m., he'd already received 7 phone calls, 3 from business associates wanting to confirm the story, 2 from managers of other establishments asking if Jones and Scott were banned district-wide, 1 from his lawyer, advising caution, and 1 from his younger brother, Miguel, not the bartender, a different Miguel, who'd heard the story third hand and wanted to make sure Becky was all right. The office was on the 4th floor of a renovated warehouse building, all exposed brick and industrial windows. Legitimate business happened here. Import-export paperwork, rental agreements, payroll for the various establishments he owned. The less legitimate business happened elsewhere. Raphael was waiting when Giacomo walked in, sitting in one of the leather chairs across from the desk, scrolling through his phone. "Morning, boss." "Raphael." Giacomo hung his jacket on the coat rack, rolled up his sleeves. "Tell me." Raphael looked up. He was 32, built like a boxer, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd been with Giacomo for 8 years, had proven himself loyal and, more importantly, discreet. Jones and Scott spent last night at Murphy's bar, drank until 2 a.m., ran up a tab they couldn't fully pay. Murphy had to cut them off. What were they saying? The usual garbage. How you embarrassed them, how they didn't know who you were, how the whole thing was blown out of proportion. Raphael paused. But then Jones started talking differently around midnight, after his 5th whiskey. Giacomo settled into his chair. Differently how? Started saying you weren't as scary as people claimed, that you were soft, that you let them walk out when you should have made an example. Raphael's expression darkened. Then he started talking about Becky. Giacomo's hands stilled on the desk. What did he say? That she wasn't worth all the drama, that she was just some... Raphael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. He used some disrespectful language, called her names I won't repeat. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "And Scott?" Giacomo's voice was dangerously calm. "Scott tried to shut him down at first, told him to let it go. But Jones kept pushing, kept drinking, kept running his mouth." Raphael leaned forward. "Here's the thing, though. There's more. Go on." Tommy Reeves was at Murphy's last night. The name landed like a punch. Tommy Reeves, small-time hustler, mid-level dealer, ambitious beyond his intelligence. He'd been trying to expand his territory for months, pushing into areas that Giacomo had explicitly marked as off-limits. "Let me guess," Giacomo said. "Reeves bought them drinks." "Round after round. Got real friendly. Started asking questions about your operations, your security, your routines." Raphael's jaw tightened. Jones was drunk enough to answer. What did he tell him? That the Velvet Room has minimal security. That you only bring 2 guys with you most nights. That Becky is often there alone while you handle business calls. Raphael paused. "And that you showed mercy when you shouldn't have." Giacomo absorbed this information, his mind already running scenarios, calculating risks, considering responses. This wasn't just 2 drunk idiots with wounded pride anymore. This was a strategic threat. Reeves was smart enough to recognize an opportunity when he saw one. Jones and Scott had given him intelligence, had exposed vulnerabilities, had painted Giacomo as weak. And in this world, perceived weakness was blood in the water. "Where are they now?" Giacomo asked. "Jones is crashing at Scott's apartment on Miller Street. Scott's been texting his girlfriend all morning, trying to convince her the whole thing was a misunderstanding." Raphael glanced at his phone. "Reeves is at his usual spot, the pool hall on 8th. He's making moves? Not yet. But he's positioning, talking to people, testing boundaries." Raphael met his eyes. "He thinks you're vulnerable right now." Giacomo stood, walked to the window overlooking the street below. People moved along the sidewalk, going about their normal lives, completely unaware of the chess game being played in the shadows around them. Becky had asked him not to escalate, had made him promise that Jones wouldn't become something bigger than 2 drunk idiots in a bar. But that choice had been taken out of his hands, because now it wasn't about Jones anymore. It was about Reeves. It was about every small-time hustler in the district watching to see how Giacomo would respond. It was about whether mercy would be interpreted as weakness. "What do you want to do?" Raphael asked quietly. Giacomo turned from the window. "Schedule a meeting with Reeves. Today. Private. Just him and me. And Jones?" "Jones is a symptom, not the disease. We handle the disease first." Raphael nodded, already texting. "I'll set it up." "And Raphael?" "Yes, boss?" "Have someone keep an eye on Becky today. Discreet. I don't want her to know, but I need to know she's safe." "Already done." "Martinez is on her." Of course he was. Raphael thought 3 steps ahead, which was why Giacomo trusted him. "One more thing," Giacomo said. "Find out exactly what Jones told Reeves. Every detail. Every security gap he mentioned. I need to know what we're working with. On it." After Raphael left, Giacomo sat alone in his office, the weight of leadership settling across his shoulders like a familiar burden. He'd built his empire on controlled responses, on strategic thinking, on being 3 moves ahead of everyone else. But there was a cost to that control. There was a cost to always being measured, always being calculated, always thinking about reputation and consequences and long-term stability. Sometimes, a part of him wanted to be the man Rodrigo had been: loud, violent, immediate, to walk into Murphy's bar and drag Jones out by his collar, to make an example so brutal that no one would ever question his authority again. But that man had died in a hail of bullets on a Tuesday afternoon, and Giacomo had promised himself he'd be smarter. His phone rang. "Becky." He answered immediately. "Hey." "Hey yourself." Her voice was warm, normal, completely unaware of the complications spiraling around them. "I'm heading to work. Just wanted to check in. Make sure you're not brooding about last night." "I'm not brooding." "You're definitely brooding. I can hear it in your voice." Despite everything, he smiled. "Maybe a little. Giacomo, I meant what I said. Don't let this consume you. Jones and Scott are gone. It's over." He wanted to tell her the truth. That it wasn't over. That it was potentially just beginning, but he couldn't. Not yet. "You're right," he lied. "It's over." "Good. I'll see you tonight. Dinner at my place? Wouldn't miss it. Love you." "Love you too." After she hung up, Giacomo stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he opened his contacts, scrolled to a name he hadn't called in months. "Isabella Cortez, investigator." She answered on the second ring. "Guerra. It's been a while. I need information on Tommy Reeves. Everything. Finances, associates, vulnerabilities. How fast?" "By tonight." "That's expensive." "I'll pay double." A pause. "Must be serious." "It is." "I'll call you back in 6 hours." The line went dead. Giacomo set his phone down and returned to the window. In the reflection, he could see himself: tailored shirt, expensive watch, controlled expression. The king of the district. But kings didn't stay kings by showing mercy to their enemies. They stayed kings by knowing exactly when mercy ended and power began. The call came at 3:47 p.m. Giacomo was reviewing shipping manifests when his phone lit up with Raphael's name. "Talk to me." Raphael's voice was tight. "We have a problem." Someone torched the liquor delivery truck heading to the Velvet Room. "Driver's okay. Jumped out before it went up, but the truck's totaled. $40,000 in premium inventory gone." Giacomo's hand tightened on the phone. "When?" 20 minutes ago. Highway 9, the service road near the industrial park. Fire department's there now, but it's already destroyed. "Cameras?" "I'm checking, but that stretch is a dead zone. Whoever did this knew that." Giacomo closed his laptop slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. "Reeves? Can't prove it yet, but the timing's convenient, isn't it? Day after Jones feeds him information, our supply chain gets hit." Raphael paused. "There's more. Tell me." "Someone spray-painted the side of the Silver Spoon restaurant. Your restaurant. Big red letters. Guerra's getting soft." The message was clear. Public. Deliberate. This wasn't random vandalism. This was a statement. "Where's Reeves now?" Giacomo asked, standing up, already reaching for his jacket. "Pool hall. Same as this morning, surrounded by his guys, playing it cool." "And Jones?" "Still at Scott's apartment. Been there all day according to our guy watching the building." Giacomo checked his watch. He had 2 hours before his meeting with Reeves. A meeting that was supposed to be a conversation, a negotiation, a chance to establish boundaries without violence. But that plan had just gone up in smoke along with $40,000 of inventory. "Change of plans," Giacomo said. "Move the meeting up. Tell Reeves I want to see him in 1 hour. The warehouse on Delta Street. Just him. He won't come alone. He will if he thinks he has leverage. Tell him I'm ready to negotiate territory. Tell him I'm willing to make concessions to avoid further incidents." Raphael was silent for a moment. "You want him to think you're scared?" "I want him to think he's winning." "That's dangerous." "So is letting him burn my assets." Giacomo grabbed his car keys. "Set it up. 1 hour. Boss, if you're going to..." "I'm not going to do anything stupid, Raphael, but I am going to make something very clear." He ended the call and stood in his office, breathing slowly, deliberately, forcing the anger down into something cold and useful. Becky's voice echoed in his head. Don't let Jones turn into something bigger than he is, but it already had, and now he had to contain it before it spread. The warehouse on Delta Street had been abandoned for 3 years. Officially, it belonged to a shell corporation that paid taxes and maintained minimal upkeep. Unofficially, it was neutral ground, a place where conversations happened that couldn't happen in public. Giacomo arrived 15 minutes early. Raphael was already there with 2 others. Martinez, the man who'd been watching Becky, and Cruz, who specialized in making problems disappear quietly. "He's coming," Raphael said, "bringing 2 guys with him despite your conditions." Expected. Giacomo surveyed the space, concrete floors, high ceilings, plenty of echo. "Where do we stand legally on the truck fire?" "Insurance will cover most of it. Police are investigating, but without cameras or witnesses, it's going nowhere." Raphael crossed his arms. "The restaurant graffiti is petty vandalism. They'll file a report, we'll clean it up, nothing happens. So legally we have nothing, correct?" Which meant this had to be handled differently. Giacomo heard the cars pull up outside, 2 vehicles, engines rumbling, doors slamming, footsteps on concrete. Tommy Reeves walked in flanked by 2 men built like brick walls. Reeves himself was smaller, mid-30s, wearing an expensive leather jacket that didn't quite fit his frame. He had the swagger of someone who thought muscle equaled power. He was wrong. "Guerra." Reeves stopped 10 feet away, grinning. "Thanks for the invitation. You brought company. So did you." Reeves gestured at Raphael and the others. "Seems fair." Giacomo didn't move from where he stood, hands in his pockets, completely relaxed. "You wanted my attention. You have it. Did I?" Reeves played innocent. "I've just been running my business, minding my own affairs." "Your affairs included buying drinks for 2 men I banned from my establishments last night. Can't control who sits at a bar, Guerra. This is America. Free country. And it included asking detailed questions about my operations." Reeves shrugged. "Making conversation. Getting to know the neighborhood. And the delivery truck that caught fire this afternoon? Terrible accident. I heard about that. Real shame." Reeves's grin widened. "Hazardous business. Transportation. Things go wrong." Giacomo studied him. Reeves thought he was clever. Thought the plausible deniability protected him. Thought that because there was no direct evidence, there would be no consequences. He didn't understand how power actually worked. "Here's what's going to happen," Giacomo said quietly. "You're going to pay for that truck. $40,000. Cash. By tomorrow morning." Reeves laughed. "Why would I do that?" "Because you torched it." "Prove it." "I don't need to prove it. I know it. You know it. Everyone in this room knows it." Giacomo's voice remained calm, conversational. "The question isn't whether you did it. The question is what happens next. Is that a threat?" "It's a choice." Giacomo finally moved, taking 3 steps forward. Reeves's men tensed, but Reeves waved them off. "I'm listening," Reeves said. "Option 1. You pay for the truck. You stay in your lane. You run your small-time operations in the areas I've allowed, and we never have this conversation again. And option 2? Option 2 is you keep pushing. You keep testing me. You keep thinking that burning trucks and spray-painting walls makes you powerful." Giacomo stopped, just out of arm's reach. "And then I stopped being polite. You showed mercy to those idiots last night. Everyone saw it. You're not the monster people think you are." "No," Giacomo agreed. "I'm worse. Because monsters are predictable. They react with violence immediately. But me? I'm strategic. I'm patient. I wait for exactly the right moment to dismantle everything you've built." Reeves's smile faltered slightly. "You think you have leverage because Jones gave you information," Giacomo continued. "But what you have is incomplete intelligence from a drunk idiot who doesn't understand my actual security protocols. What you have is a false sense of confidence. And what you're about to have is a very serious problem. Big words. Not words. Facts." Giacomo pulled out his phone, opened a photo, held it up. Reeves leaned in to look, then went pale. It was a picture of Reeves's mother's house in the suburbs. Recent. High resolution. Taken from across the street. "That's your mother's address?" "Yes." Giacomo pocketed the phone. "Nice garden. She grows roses, doesn't she?" "You threatening my mother?" "I'm making a point. I know everything about you, Tommy. Your mother's address, your girlfriend's work schedule, the storage unit where you keep your real inventory. The offshore account in Grand Cayman that your accountant thinks is secret." Giacomo's eyes were ice. "I know how much you're actually worth, and it's not enough to go to war with me." Reeves's jaw clenched. "So here's what's really going to happen," Giacomo said. "You're going to leave here. You're going to think very carefully about whether this territory fight is worth it. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to receive $40,000 in cash, along with a very sincere apology. And if you don't, then I stop playing chess and start playing checkers. And trust me, you don't want that game." The warehouse was silent except for the distant sound of traffic. Finally, Reeves spoke. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Reeves turned and walked out, his men following. Their footsteps echoed across the concrete, then faded as the car started and drove away. Raphael exhaled. That went better than expected. It's not done yet, Giacomo said. You really have all that information on him? Most of it. Isabella's thorough. Giacomo checked his phone. But Reeves isn't the real problem. Jones. Jones gave Reeves the ammunition. This doesn't stop until we deal with the source. Giacomo didn't go home that night. Instead, he sat in his office until 2 a.m., watching security feeds from his various establishments, checking inventory reports, coordinating with managers, making sure everything was locked down tight. Because Reeves would retaliate. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Men who got cornered either submitted or lashed out, and Reeves didn't strike him as the submitting type. At 2:17 a.m., his phone rang. Raphael, talk to me. Someone just tried to break into the storage facility on Commerce Street, the one where we keep the restaurant supplies. Raphael's voice was strained. Security caught them on camera. 2 guys, wore masks, bolt cutters. They ran when the alarm went off. Giacomo stood up from his desk. Damage? Locks cut, but they didn't get inside. Martinez is there now securing it. Reeves? Can't prove it, but the timing fits. Raphael paused. Boss, this is escalating fast. First the truck, then the graffiti, now attempted break-ins. He's testing every vulnerability Jones mentioned. Giacomo grabbed his jacket. I'm coming to you. There's something else. The tone made Giacomo freeze. What? Becky called me 20 minutes ago. His blood went cold. Why didn't you lead with that? Because she's fine. She's safe. But someone followed her home tonight. Black sedan, no plates visible. Stayed 3 cars back the whole drive, parked across the street from her building for 10 minutes, then left. Giacomo's hand tightened on the phone so hard he heard the case crack. Where is she now? Inside her apartment. Doors locked. Martinez is outside her building. I didn't tell her about him, but he's there. I'm going to her. Boss, maybe that's what Reeves wants. To pull you out in the open, make you reactive. I don't care what Reeves wants. Giacomo was already moving toward the door. Becky is not a chess piece. She doesn't get used as leverage. Understood. I'll meet you there. Giacomo drove through the empty streets, doing 20 over the speed limit, his mind replaying every conversation, every decision, every moment that had led here. He'd shown mercy to Jones and Scott, had let them walk away when he could have ended it definitively, and now Becky was being followed. This was his fault. Becky opened her apartment door before he could knock, wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her curly hair pulled back. You didn't need to come, she said, but stepped aside to let him in. Yes, I did. Giacomo scanned the apartment automatically, windows locked, curtains drawn, everything secure. Then he turned to her. Tell me exactly what happened. Becky wrapped her arms around herself. I left work around 8, stopped at the grocery store on 5th. When I got back in my car, I noticed a black sedan a few cars behind me. I didn't think much of it at first, but it followed me through 4 turns. Did you see the driver? No, tinted windows. But when I pulled into my building's garage, it drove past slowly, then circled the block and parked across the street. She met his eyes. I'm not paranoid, Giacomo. Someone was watching me. I know. I believe you. He pulled her into his arms, felt her relax slightly against him. You did the right thing calling Raphael. I almost called the police. Why didn't you? Because I knew what you'd say. That involving them would create complications. That you'd handle it. She pulled back to look at him. But I'm scared, Giacomo. Not of Jones or whoever that was. I'm scared of what you're going to do about it. I'm going to keep you safe. That's not what I asked. Her voice was firm. I asked what you're going to do. Because there's a difference between protection and retaliation. And I need to know which one you're planning. Giacomo wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her he'd handle it quietly, diplomatically, without violence. But he'd promised no lies. Reeves is behind this, he said. The truck fire, the break-in attempt, following you home. He's escalating because he thinks I'm weak. And if I don't respond decisively, it won't stop with surveillance. It'll get worse. So you're going to hurt him. I'm going to remove him as a threat. Those aren't the same thing. In my world they are. Becky stepped back, creating distance between them. This is exactly what I was afraid of. That Jones and Scott would turn into something bigger. That your need to maintain control would turn 2 drunk idiots into a war. This isn't about control. This is about safety. Your safety. Don't put this on me. Her voice rose slightly. Don't make me the excuse for whatever you're planning to do to Reeves. I'm not asking you to hurt people on my behalf. You're not asking. I'm choosing. Giacomo forced himself to stay calm. Becky, you're being followed. Your routine is being monitored. That's not hypothetical danger. That's real, immediate threat. So call the police. File a report. Let the system handle it. The system doesn't work in situations like this. You know that. I know you don't trust it to work. Becky's eyes were bright with frustration. There's a difference. They stood in her living room, the space between them feeling wider than 3 feet. Giacomo understood what was happening. This was the conversation they'd been avoiding since they got engaged. The fundamental question of whether Becky could truly accept his methods, or whether she'd always be asking him to be someone he wasn't. I can't be the man you want me to be, and keep you safe at the same time, he said quietly. I wish I could. But in this world, mercy is interpreted as weakness, and weakness gets people hurt. So what are you saying? That you're going to hurt Reeves? Kill him? I'm saying I'm going to make sure he never threatens you again. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. Becky turned away, walked to the window, stared out at the city lights through the curtain. I love you. You know that. But I can't be the reason you become someone you're not. I've always been this person, Becky. You just haven't had to see it up close until now. She turned back to him, and there were tears in her eyes. Then maybe I need to see all of it. Not the sanitized version, not the strategic explanations. All of it. What you're actually planning to do. Giacomo moved closer, stopped just in front of her. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with Reeves again. I'm giving him one last chance to walk away, to take his operation out of this district entirely, and never come back. And if he refuses, then I dismantle everything he's built, his suppliers, his distribution network, his protection. I make it impossible for him to operate here. Without violence, I'll use as little as necessary. That's still not a no, because I can't promise you no. Giacomo took her hands. I can promise you I won't be reckless. I won't be cruel. I won't enjoy it. But I can't promise that protecting you won't require force. Becky searched his face for a long moment. I need to think. About what? About whether I can live with this. With you. With this life. She squeezed his hands, then let go. I love you, Giacomo. But love isn't always enough. The words hit him harder than any physical blow. Are you ending this? He asked. I'm asking for time to process. To figure out if I can be the person standing next to you while you do what you think you need to do. How much time? I don't know. She wiped her eyes. But tonight, I need space. Giacomo wanted to argue, to convince her, to promise things he couldn't deliver. Instead, he nodded. Martinez is outside. He'll keep you safe. I don't want. Non-negotiable. He stays until this is resolved. Becky didn't fight him on it, just nodded tiredly. Giacomo kissed her forehead, lingering for a moment, breathing in her scent, memorizing the feeling of her close to him. Then he left. In the hallway outside her apartment, Raphael was waiting, leaning against the wall. How much did you hear? Giacomo asked. Enough. Raphael pushed off the wall. What do you want to do? Giacomo stared at Becky's door for a moment longer, then turned toward the elevator. Find Jones and Scott. Bring them to the warehouse. Tonight. Both of them? Both of them. This ends now. Jones and Scott were brought to the warehouse at 4:47 a.m. They came separately, Scott in Raphael's car, compliant and terrified, hands zip-tied in front of him. Jones in Cruz's vehicle, fighting the restraints, shouting threats that died the moment he saw Giacomo standing in the center of the empty space. The warehouse lights were harsh, industrial, casting sharp shadows across the concrete floor. Giacomo had been waiting for an hour, using the time to think, to plan, to decide exactly how this would unfold. Raphael and Cruz positioned the two men on their knees, 15 feet apart, facing Giacomo. Jones's bravado crumbled the moment his knees hit concrete. Scott was already crying, snot running down his face, mumbling apologies to no one in particular. Do you know why you're here? Giacomo asked quietly. Scott nodded frantically. Jones said nothing, jaw clenched, trying desperately to maintain some dignity. I gave you a chance, Giacomo continued, walking slowly between them. I could have hurt you that night at the Velvet Room. Could have had you beaten. Could have made examples of you in front of everyone. But I didn't. We left like you said, Scott gasped out. We stayed away from your bars. We didn't come back. You went to Murphy's bar, you got drunk, and you talked. Giacomo stopped in front of Jones. You told Tommy Reeves about my security protocols, about my routines, about my fiancé. Jones's eyes widened. That wasn't I was just talking. I didn't think. You didn't think. Giacomo's voice was ice. You were humiliated, so you ran your mouth to anyone who would listen. And Reeves listened very carefully. I didn't know he'd do anything with it. Didn't you? Giacomo crouched down, eye level with Jones. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted revenge, wanted to hurt me however you could. So you gave information to a man who's been trying to push into my territory for months. Jones's breathing was ragged. I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did go this far. A truck burned. My restaurant was vandalized. My fiancé was followed home tonight. Giacomo's voice dropped even lower. Because of your wounded pride. Scott was sobbing openly now. Please, we'll do anything. We'll leave the city. You'll never see us again. Giacomo stood up, walked over to Scott. You, he pointed at him. You tried to stop Jones at Murphy's. Raphael told me. You told him to shut up, to let it go. Is that true? Scott nodded desperately. I knew it was a mistake. I knew we should have just forgotten about it. But you didn't leave. You stayed. You let him keep talking. I didn't know what else to do. You could have called me, could have warned me what Jones was planning. Giacomo studied him. But you didn't, because you were scared of him, but not scared enough of me. I am now. I swear, I am now. Giacomo turned to Raphael. Let him go. Raphael pulled out a knife, cut the zip ties. Scott collapsed forward, hands free, gasping in relief. You have 2 hours to pack whatever fits in one bag, Giacomo told him. Then you get on a bus to anywhere that isn't here. If I ever see you in this city again, if I hear your name mentioned in connection with my businesses, if you so much as send a postcard back here, this mercy ends. Understand? Yes, thank you, I understand. Get out. Scott scrambled to his feet and ran, his footsteps echoing off the warehouse walls until the door slammed shut behind him. That left Jones. Giacomo walked back over to him. Jones was shaking now, the reality of his situation fully sinking in. You're different, Giacomo said. You're the one who started this, who pointed your finger in her face, who grabbed her wrist, who then went and gave intel to my enemy. Please. You have one chance to be useful to me. Giacomo pulled out his phone, opened the voice recording app. I want you to tell me everything you told Reeves, every detail, every question he asked, every answer you gave. And I want you to call him, right now, and tell him you made a mistake. Jones's eyes darted to the phone, to Raphael and Cruz standing nearby, back to Giacomo. What do I tell him? You tell him that I have you, that you're sorry for giving him bad information, that everything you said was exaggerated or wrong because you were drunk and angry. Giacomo held the phone out. You convince him that whatever he's planning based on your intel won't work. He'll kill me for that. Probably. But if you don't do it, I'll kill you right now. The choice wasn't really a choice. Jones took the phone with shaking hands. Giacomo dialed Reeves's number, put it on speaker. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. Who the hell is this? Tommy, it's Jones. Don't hang up. Jones? How did you get this number? Listen, I need to tell you something. About what I said at Murphy's. There was a pause. Background noise suggested Reeves was sitting up, suddenly alert. What about it? I was wrong. About Guerra's security. About his routines. I was drunk and pissed off and I exaggerated everything. Jones's voice was steady now, terror giving him focus. The stuff I told you about the Velvet Room, about his fiancée being alone, it's not true. He has people everywhere. Cameras I didn't see. He knew everything we did that night. Why are you telling me this? Because he has me right now. He's listening to this call. And he wanted you to know that whatever you're planning, it won't work. Silence on the other end. Then Reeves laughed. Put him on. Giacomo took the phone. Tommy, Guerra, didn't take you long? You have until noon today to bring me 40,000 in cash and disappear from this district permanently. Otherwise, what happens to Jones tonight is going to look merciful compared to what happens to you. Big threats. Not threats, promises. I know about the shipment coming through the port tomorrow. I know about your supplier in Philadelphia. I know about the apartment on 7th where you keep your real books. Giacomo's voice was calm, factual. I can destroy you financially without ever touching you physically, but if you push me, I'll do both. Another pause. Noon, Reeves said finally. Delta Street warehouse? No. The Velvet Room. Public. Professional. You bring cash and an apology. You're really going to make me apologize? To Becky. Yes. The line went dead. Giacomo handed the phone back to Raphael, then turned to Jones. You did good. Jones exhaled shakily. So I can go? No. Giacomo's expression didn't change. Raphael, take him to the facility on Industrial Boulevard. Keep him there until I know Reeves isn't going to retaliate. Wait, you said? I said you had a chance to be useful. You were. But I didn't say anything about letting you go. Giacomo started walking toward the exit. You'll stay in protective custody until this is resolved. If Reeves shows up at noon with the money, you'll be released unharmed to wherever you want to go. If he doesn't, we'll revisit this conversation. That's not fair. Giacomo stopped, turned back. You pointed your finger in my fiancée's face. You grabbed her wrist. You gave information to my enemy that resulted in her being followed home. Fair left the building the moment you decided she was an acceptable target. He walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving Jones's protests echoing behind him. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up. Delivery trucks rumbled past. Streetlights flickered off as the sky lightened from black to deep blue. Raphael joined him a moment later. You really think Reeves will show? Yes, because I gave him an out that doesn't involve violence. Men like Reeves are smart enough to take it. And if he doesn't, then we go to plan B. Which is? Giacomo pulled out his phone, looked at the message Becky had sent an hour ago. Still awake. Still thinking. I love you. He typed back. I love you too. This ends today. Then he looked at Raphael. Plan B is I stop being the measured, controlled person I've tried to be, and I remind this entire district why people used to cross the street when they saw me coming. Boss, but it won't come to that. Giacomo pocketed his phone. Because Reeves is going to show. He's going to pay. He's going to apologize. And then this is over. You sound certain. I am. Because I just showed him I can dismantle his entire operation without breaking a sweat. And men who've built something always choose survival over pride when they realize how easily it can all disappear. Raphael nodded slowly. What about Becky? What about her? She asked for space to think. About whether she can live with this life. Giacomo stared at the horizon, watching the sun start to rise. Then I guess we'll find out if ending this the right way is enough. The Velvet Room opened early that morning. Not for regular business, the doors remained locked to the public. But inside, the staff moved with quiet efficiency, polishing glasses, arranging bottles, preparing the space for what everyone knew would be a significant moment. Giacomo arrived at 10 a.m., 2 hours before Reeves was scheduled to appear. He'd showered, changed into a fresh black suit, made himself presentable despite running on no sleep. Appearances mattered, especially today. Peterson, the manager, met him at the door. Mr. Guerra, everything is ready as you requested. Good. I want Raphael and Martinez visible but not threatening. No one else. This doesn't need to look like an ambush. Understood. And the other thing? Peterson hesitated. She arrived 20 minutes ago. She's waiting at the bar. Giacomo's chest tightened. He hadn't expected Becky to come. Hadn't asked her to. But somehow she'd known. He found her sitting on the same bar stool where Jones had cornered her 3 nights ago. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her curly hair loose around her shoulders, a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up when he approached. Hey. Hey. He stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure. You didn't have to come. I know. She took a sip of her coffee. But I needed to see how this ends. See what you choose when it matters. Becky, if Reeves says something disrespectful, if this goes wrong, then I'll see who you really are under pressure. She met his eyes. That's why I'm here. Not to judge you, to understand you. Giacomo sat down beside her, leaving one stool between them. I didn't sleep. Neither did I. She turned to face him fully. I spent all night thinking about what you said, about how you can't be the man I want you to be, and keep me safe at the same time. And I think you're wrong. Her voice was steady. I don't want you to be someone you're not. I want you to be exactly who you are, strategic, controlled, powerful. But I also want you to remember that power without restraint is just violence, and violence without purpose is just cruelty. I've never been cruel. I know. That's why I'm still here. She reached across the empty stool, took his hand. But last night scared me. Not because of Reeves or Jones. Because I saw how close you came to choosing revenge over resolution. They threatened you, and you protected me. But there's a difference between protection and destruction, Giacomo. One keeps me safe, the other keeps you in control. He wanted to argue, to explain all the strategic reasons why his methods were necessary. But she was right, and they both knew it. So what do you want from me? He asked quietly. I want you to end this today without becoming the thing you've spent 15 years trying not to be. She squeezed his hand. I want you to prove that controlled power is stronger than rage. Before he could respond, Raphael appeared in the doorway. Boss, he's here, early. Giacomo checked his watch. 11:15 a.m., 45 minutes ahead of schedule. How many? Just him. One bag. Looks heavy. Show him in. Becky released his hand, straightened on her stool. I'm staying. Are you sure? Completely. Tommy Reeves walked into the velvet room carrying a black duffel bag and wearing an expression that was part resignation, part calculation. He stopped when he saw Becky. His eyes flickered with recognition, then carefully blanked. Guerra. He set the bag on a nearby table. I'm early. I noticed. Giacomo remained seated, completely relaxed. You bring what I asked for? 40,000. Used bills, non-sequential. Reeves unzipped the bag, showed the stacks of cash inside. Count it if you want. I trust you. That seemed to throw Reeves off balance. You do? You're smart enough to know that shorting me would be stupid. So yes, I trust you brought the full amount. Giacomo gestured to the bar. Drink? It's 11 in the morning. I've had a long night. Thought I'd offer. Reeves studied him warily, clearly trying to figure out the angle. What's this really about, Guerra? You wanted me here. Public. Professional. Why? Because I wanted you to see something. See what? Giacomo stood up, walked over to the duffel bag, zipped it closed without looking inside. I wanted you to see that I don't need violence to win. I could have had you beaten, could have burned your operations to the ground, could have made you disappear, but you didn't. Because that's not who I am anymore. I'm not Rodrigo, ruling through fear and bullets. I'm something different, something more sustainable. Reeves's jaw tightened. So this was a lesson? For both of us. Giacomo picked up the bag, handed it to Raphael. You learned that pushing into my territory has consequences, and I learned that mercy doesn't equal weakness, as long as it's backed by the capacity for something worse. Meaning? Meaning you're leaving this district today. You're taking your operation somewhere else. I don't care where, as long as it's not here. And in exchange, I'm letting you keep everything you've built. Your connections, your suppliers, your reputation. Reeves absorbed this. That's it? I pay 40 grand and leave? There's one more thing. Giacomo gestured toward Becky. You apologized to her. The warehouse conversation had prepared Reeves for this, but actually doing it was clearly difficult. He turned to Becky, who was watching him with calm, assessing eyes. I'm sorry, Reeves said stiffly. For the intimidation, for having you followed. That was out of line. Becky didn't respond immediately. She took a sip of her coffee, set it down carefully, then looked at Giacomo instead of Reeves. Is he the one who followed me, or did he hire someone? Giacomo understood what she was doing. Testing, seeing how honest this resolution would be. He hired someone, Giacomo said. A freelancer named Dixon, who is currently sitting in a holding cell on unrelated charges that will keep him busy for 6 months. Becky nodded, then finally looked at Reeves. Do you understand what you did wrong? Reeves blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I crossed a line. You made me a target because you were angry at him. You used me as leverage in a fight that had nothing to do with me. Her voice was steady but hard. That's not just crossing a line. That's being a coward. The insult landed. Reeves's face flushed, but he didn't respond. So, when you apologize, Becky continued, I need you to mean it. Not because Giacomo is making you. Not because you're scared of consequences. But because you actually understand that I'm a person, not a chess piece. Silence filled the bar. Then Reeves spoke, and this time his voice was different. Quieter. More genuine. You're right. I'm sorry. Truly. I was angry and stupid, and I made you a target when you didn't deserve it. That was wrong. Becky studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Accepted. Giacomo saw Reeves's shoulders relax slightly, the first genuine relief he'd shown since walking in. We're done here. Giacomo said. Raphael will escort you out. You have 24 hours to relocate your operations. After that, this district is closed to you permanently. Reeves nodded, started toward the door, then stopped. Gara, for what it's worth, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone louder. Someone meaner. Reeves glanced back at Becky, then at Giacomo. Someone who would have just killed me and been done with it. I used to be that person. Then I met someone who made me want to be better. After Reeves left, escorted by Raphael, the bar fell silent. Giacomo returned to the stool beside Becky. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What? He asked. That was the right way to handle it. You sound surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm relieved. She turned to face him fully. You had every reason to be violent, every justification, but you chose strategy instead, because you asked me to. No, because you wanted to. She touched his face gently. And that's the difference between doing something for someone and doing something because of who they help you become. Giacomo pulled her closer, rested his forehead against hers. I almost lost you over this. You didn't lose me. You scared me. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, because scared means I still have faith you'll figure it out. Lost means I've given up. She kissed him softly. And I haven't given up on you, Giacomo Gara, even knowing what I'm capable of. Especially knowing that. Because capability without action is called restraint. And restraint is the strongest thing you've shown me. They sat like that for a while. The morning sun streaming through the windows, the bar empty and quiet around them. Finally, Becky pulled back. What happens to Jones? He gets released this afternoon. Put on a bus to Atlanta with enough money to start over and a very clear understanding never to return. And that's it? It's over? It's over. Good. She stood up, stretched. Then let's go home. I'm exhausted. Your place or mine? Ours, she smiled. I think it's time we stopped pretending we don't share a life. Giacomo stood, took her hand, and walked out of the velvet room into the bright afternoon. Behind them, Peterson locked the door and began preparing for normal business hours. The district would talk about this for weeks. About how Gara handled the Reeves situation without bloodshed. About how his fiancée sat beside him during the resolution. About how power looked different when it was controlled instead of unleashed. And in the quiet spaces between those conversations, people would understand something fundamental. The most dangerous mistake wasn't just underestimating who someone belonged to. It was underestimating the woman who chose to stand beside him, and the man who chose restraint because she asked him to. Thanks for sticking with this story until the very end. You're the reason these stories feel alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to read your thoughts and connect with you in the comments.